From time to time, people call us with questions about contactors and how to install a new style contactor. So we thought we'd show a little bit about the difference between the old style and the new style. This is an old style contactor. The coil for this contactor is powered by the 24 volts. The connections are located on one side of the contactor. The new style contactors that we're seeing now have these same connections connected on each side of them. So it's just a matter of switching the control wires from these two terminals to these two, one on each side as opposed to one on each end. The old style contactor on the right is a 2-pole contactor. The new style on the left is a single pole. The old style has exposed contacts and the new style has a dust cover over the contacts. You need to remove that dust cover in order to inspect the contacts. There's a couple of tabs on each side of the contactor that you press in with a small screwdriver in order to remove this contact cover. This is what the new style contactor looks like with the cover removed. As you can see on the cover, there's a couple of little barb fittings that press down into a notch on the top of this contactor. As you can see, the single pole has one contact that actually operates, where the 2-pole has two contacts that actually operate. That's the difference between the contactors. The single pole has a bar through the side of it that is not shut off when you stop the unit. So when you check if the contactor is not pulled in, you will always have voltage to the condensing unit if you measure to ground, or to the compressor if you measure to ground. That's why you always check voltage at the item you're trying to see if it's powered or not. You always check between the two power supplies to the item, not to ground. When you're testing this contactor, you need to check for 24 volts between these two terminals on either side of it. That's the coil voltage that energizes this contactor. If you have 24 volts here, this contact should be pulled in. If that contact is not pulled in, the contact's touching, then you have a bad coil on this contactor. When you're checking for voltage, you always test between the lines. You do not ever test to ground, only to verify if you have voltage there. If you don't have 230 volts coming into this contactor, you have a problem. You may have a blown fuse that will give you 110 volts on either side if you're reading to ground. The reason it will read on either side is the 110 volts will bleed back through the system and come into the other side of the contactor. It doesn't really answer any questions for you other than to tell you that there is some power present. Always check between the connections to verify that you have the full voltage required to operate your equipment. One side of this contactor will be power that's feeding from the disconnect on the outside of the unit. When the contactor energizes, it supplies power to the compressor and the condenser fan motor. You need to check and make sure that you have 230 volts between the two terminals on each side of the contactor. If you're only reading 230 volts on one side and not the other, then the contactor is open. Once again, you need to check the 24 volts and see if you have 24 volts. If you do have 24 volts here, 230 here, and nothing here, then you have a bad contactor. There's an issue with the contact points on the contactor. Be sure and look at the contacts for any discoloration or pitting. If it's pitted severely, or if the contacts are discolored, then that contactor should be replaced because you have a voltage drop across the contactor and it's creating heat inside the contactor.